Welcome to our podcast, The Better You Are, The Better You Are. Whether it is physically, mentally, or spiritually, when you know better, you can do better. And when you do better, you'll be better. On this podcast, we share knowledge, expertise, opinions, and experiences. All things that can help you to change the game. By the time we're done, it's hard for you not to be encouraged. So join us. The better you are, the better you are.
In either one of your opinions, what would you feel like would be the most urgent need, kind of going back to, this before we even get to the doctors, the healthcare system in general, that would have a significant reduce in maternal and infant mortality?
Well, I think as we have said, it's important for patients, individuals to understand the importance of health care, medical care, the difference that it can make. And if you've had what you feel wasn't the best experience, we'll just say, or if someone is perhaps giving you advice that you're not sure of, you need to talk to either your doctor, a different doctor, a trusted friend, someone who can help you to better understand it. Because I think you have to understand what can happen to you. So as Dr. Dungy-Porter says, if you are told, well, your baby might not do well, it's very different from your baby could die. And this could happen, but there are things that we can do in the medical profession to help decrease that chance. And we've seen it work before. We know what we're doing and we want to help you. And I think it's important for patients to understand that all of us in medical care want to help. We want the best possible outcome for every patient. Yes, there are times when it feels like that's not the case, if someone's rude on the phone and all that. But ultimately, we take those oaths that say, we will help you do well, be well, and identify what your problem is and treat it. And we need to have that kind of trust from individuals so that then they'll come back to us or come to someone, even if they don't come back to us, that they recognize that we have lots of information. There's evidence-based science that says these are treatments that will address the problems, be it diabetes, hypertension, and pregnancy, and then that impact on children, i.e. the fetus and the newborn. If I know that this mom has one of those diagnoses, then I'm better prepared to manage that baby at time of birth. As soon as they're born, I want to then immediately start checking the blood sugar, checking their blood pressures, checking, the growth, monitoring what nutrition a baby needs to have. But I can start that at the very beginning. So if mom has received prenatal care and those issues have been identified, then we're prepared on our side to manage the babies better. I think just advocacy from the very beginning, before pregnancy, throughout, and then after pregnancy.
Yeah, I agree. Don't wait until you're sick to find a doctor. Don't wait until you're pregnant to find an OB-GYN that you trust. And it can be hard and it can be challenging. And, they don't necessarily have to look like you. Studies and your personal relationship will tell you that people who understand where you're coming from and who resemble who you are, regardless of the color of your skin, resemble your background and your thoughts and your processes, you're probably going to relate to better. Find somebody you can relate to and trust, and do that work ahead of time before you get, high blood pressure or before you get pregnant.
Yes. Nation, I will ask you guys just a couple more questions before we get ready to turn to the audience for some questions as well. And so thinking back to the support, how do, fathers, come around mothers? I'll just leave it there. Let's go there.
Mm-hmm. Super important, right? And it's important for the father to feel included. It's important for that baby. I'm always going to speak about the baby to have that sense of interaction with the father, or the support. So it's the family, it's the community. And we want dads in the picture for sure. So if mom, we encourage breastfeeding with, newborns. So Mom breastfeeds, she pumps some, dad feeds that bottle to the baby. Any way that the dad can be included is important, starting out when the baby is a baby, infant, and then as they grow up with that individual in their world, it's just supported. We need that. As individuals, we're very social, right? And so we need that involvement from both parents or whoever is the significant other, the people who can then support those children as they grow. And, it's rare that I'll talk about anything without mentioning my daughters, and I have two, and they're in their 30s and they still call me and talk, and we talk, and I think that's important. And I think that we all need that from wherever we can get it. Moms, dads, aunts, uncles, godmothers, you name it, neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree. And I think dads are sometimes overlooked, particularly, I will admit, in my field, we're so focused on the woman and her, whatever the problem is. And particularly, I deal with high-risk pregnancy. So there's usually something that's not quite right. And it's important to help educate the dad on that as well, who's at the appointment, or all the issues that dads have to take care of. Maybe you have other children and the dad is not there because he's taking care of other children and other issues. One of my favorite things used to be to say to a dad who sort of came in, do you need a cup of coffee? Would you like a cup of coffee? And they're like, it's all I have, but I'll offer you that. And they're so grateful oftentimes because, did you get enough to eat? Have you eaten? Have people paying attention to you because you're focused on the mom and trying to help take care of her. Sometimes it comes out a little angry. I'm trying to do this. I've got to be in control. I'm going to take control of this. So, my wife is not feeling well. What are you going to do? To realize that's not about me. That's not about me. And he's not angry at me. He doesn't understand the woman barely understands what it is. She's pregnant. The man is trying to understand oftentimes and totally not educated, not aware, not experienced in the things that women go through. And to understand there's a little anxiety there. There's a little bit, I'm scared. Maybe I had one patient, a husband, it wasn't even a husband, it was a boyfriend and a woman that I spent my lunch hour, over the hour, going back and forth talking to them because I was recommending they deliver a little bit early. And he didn't want to. And he kept wanting to ask me questions. So you guys think it through. Here's what we recommend. And finally, he said, well, what if my baby dies? I said, I've never seen anybody die at 36 weeks from being delivered prematurely. And he yelled back at me, but I have. That was the issue. It took us an hour to get to that. And whatever this baby died of, he said the doctors told him it's because it was premature. I don't think that was the case. But that was the issue. And I said to him in a nice way, yeah, it took us a long way to get here. I need you to tell your doctors what you're afraid of. And sometimes that's a little hard for men to do. But if we can understand and have a dialogue, here's what I'm really concerned about. Here's what I'm scared about for my wife or whatever. And sometimes that comes out a little bit harsh and a little bit angry, but to understand that's not about me and that's not about you being a bad person. It's just we're both concerned about this woman right here and how do we work together to help this woman.
Absolutely. So going off of that, sorry, what steps can be taken to improve postpartum care and mental health support for moms?
Oh,
and
mental health, so important before, during, and after pregnancy, but particularly after. I don't know if you have children, but anybody who's had a baby knows it's rough. It's hard on a good day, let alone having some complication that you're in the hospital for 3 months afterwards, or that you're still in the hospital, or that your baby's in the hospital. It's challenging. And the mental health concerns with just everything going on in our society today, and you're worried about things and if you have other children on top of that, or elderly parents that you have to take care of, all the intersectionality that a woman let alone a man, but that a woman has to go through of all the things she might be concerned about, mental health is important, and to have culturally sensitive mental health care is important. And we don't have enough mental health care. That's something we need to work on. The providers, you can recognize and say, now what I do, I'm not trained enough in it to really help people. Sorry for hitting my mic, but I recognize this need. I now want to refer you to somebody. I will tell you something I learned. I was giving a lecture yesterday, and this woman said to me, this care provider who's a nurse practitioner, which I thought was brilliant, and I haven't thought of it before, but I'm telling everybody about it now. So back at 20 weeks or 22 weeks or whatever, when she recognizes a patient has hypertension, she knows that patient's going to need some primary care after delivery. She puts the consult in then, because she knows it takes a long time to get a primary care visit and schedule. She said, even then, I can't get some patients in to see a doctor postpartum when I deliver them. And so I thought that was brilliant. We don't have enough doctors in the mental health field, or doctors or psychologists or other providers, but it's so key in so many things with everything that's going on in our society. We have spiritual hesitancy. We have cultural hesitancy about the fact that I would like to have some help with my mental health. I love the commercials. I love that commercial with the guy with the weights, and he's lifting. He's like, "You need some help, man?" He's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." "You sure you don't need some help, man?" And like, "Yeah, I need a little help." And there's people out there to help you.
The acknowledgement by the individual that they need help is important. Shouldn't be shame. It shouldn't be, I don't want to ask because they'll think it's something wrong with me. I dare say everyone in this room has had a moment
Amen.
when they could have used
Amen.
someone to talk to about a situation, and oftentimes in the middle of the night, or, it's a time when no one else is around. And so get on your knees, right? But then there are these services that we need to accept and acknowledge. And as you describe, postpartum depression, however you want to describe it, it's hard. And then if your baby doesn't go home with you, because when you get pregnant, you're going to have a baby, you would start envisioning, right? That perfect day, 9 months out, you're going to take this baby home in pink or blue or whatever. And then something happens, the baby goes to the NICU. And that means your baby's not in the room with you. You're not able to do all those things that you had planned. And now your baby's going to stay. And the hospital says, you have to be discharged, Mom. You can't stay any longer. But my baby is here. Sorry, you're going to have to be discharged. So it's a very difficult time at best with everything going right. And then if a baby has issues that requires additional care, couple days, months, longer sometimes, that's hard. And so the mental health needs are tremendous for every mom who has delivered a baby. And then, as I say, for most of us, at some point, we could use someone to talk to.
Yes. No, yes. Not to completely summarize, because we'll still have some more questions and some more thoughts around things. But a lot of what you guys shared, I came to grips of just taking the time to take the time with folks, be there for individuals, hear them out. Just like the story of the father, it was the relationship that continued on before he, had this space of sharing what was actually wrong, or any of these mothers, being advocated for, is just this relationship piece. So I think that's huge. So anyone in person, feel free now to kind of chime in, ask a question, and any of those online, please drop them in the chat as well.
So, we all know how important, resources and, accessibility are to prenatal care. However, we're also aware that there's a lot of barriers to accessing that important care. In your opinion, what are some ways that maybe the different sectors in the community can work together to address that accessibility barrier and allow mothers and expecting mothers, and then also the people working with them, to get them to the appropriate resources that they may need?
Well, I always say that knowledge is power. So to share the knowledge, to share why it's important, to share with, and there are resources out there in the community. And I always say it's hard to beat a good team. So if we work together, I work at Riley. Dr. Matori works at Riley and Eskenazi. Riley's an awesome system But we can't expect everybody to come to Riley. We have to work with our partners out in the community who already have the relationships, who already have the trust with the community, and build those resources and work with those other resources and connect them with each other so that we can provide those resources, I think is a way to do it, and to educate the community on what's available. Did you know this is available over on this side of town? Or did you know this is available, maybe in your own community? Or did you know it's important to find a doctor now and go in and be seen? And if you don't like this doctor, ask around to some other programs or stuff that's in the community that might help you find somebody that better suits your needs.
Yeah, I would tag to that also, spreading the word. And I think that's what you're saying. So if you, in your circle of friends, have had a good experience and you know someone, and then you happen to be at church or at a party or wherever, and there's someone who is saying, I don't have a doctor, but I don't trust doctors because I don't trust doctors, and I'll be okay. This is my third baby. I've had two and they're all fine, so I don't have to go to the doctor. Trying to educate that individual that every pregnancy is different, number one. And even if you haven't had a good experience in one spot, for example, Eskenazi, we have lots of clinics, Riley, lots of clinics. All of the hospitals have clinics and setups in the community. Reach out. And once again, and I said this earlier, we all want it to go well for you. We all in our profession want you to do well. We want healthy babies, we want healthy moms for the long haul. Because yes, it's maybe 7 to 9 months at this point during the pregnancy, but so much of what a mom experiences when she's pregnant is going to impact her after, right? And if she's not healthy as a new mom, she can't then be there for her children. And, it just spins out of control. And so anything that can help to spread the word in terms of education, availability of resources, they may not be readily accessible at this point, but what can we do? And I think the discussions like this that include individuals in all of aspects, whether it's nursing, community health worker, physician, provider, doula, to then just brainstorm, okay, what can we do? How can we improve the care and the provision of care and resources for patients and people in our communities? We have to do this.
Or maybe it's even like at this church over here, they have mental health service, or they have a person who will talk to you. Or, a lot of people in I had problems with not feeling so great after delivery. And I had a little bit of postpartum depression, and I talked to this person at this church, or they have diapers over at this church for services, things that help relieve some of the anxieties and challenges that you have. It doesn't even necessarily have to be directly related to medicine, but the more we can help and relieve some of the stresses can help people take a little anxiety off of them.
There was someone with a question in the back. Oh, okay.
I just have one online, whether you're okay jumping in then. It's a long question. I'm going to summarize it. Basically, they're asking, what advice can you give to someone who doesn't know how to advocate for themselves or doesn't have people around them to help them advocate for themselves in the doctor's office?
I would say in the doctor's office, or particularly in your labor and delivery. You're in labor. That's a very vulnerable position. And you want to say, hey, I don't think you're treating me right. And you're totally at the mercy of the people who are taking care of you. So I would say things that you can do is attend programs like this. Know things like what preeclampsia, what the symptoms are, or something. So you can say, hey, I think I might be a preeclamptic. You might even say, I heard that Black women die more from this. And I'm Black, so I'm a little bit afraid of this. And so now it's caught their attention. But it can be challenging. It can be challenging. You can be like Serena Williams with all the money and be educated and say, I don't think you're treating me well. I think I need this and that. And your doctor or provider might become a little offended. You don't have the resources like she did to get on the phone to her agent and say, get me out of this hospital. You're totally at their mercy. I tell people, if you don't feel like you have anybody else or you don't feel like it's wise for you to be your own advocate, call pastoral care. It's hard for physicians and providers to and tell that pastoral care person, I don't feel like they're listening to me, or I'm scared about something. I'm scared I don't feel right. I don't know what to do. Can you help me get some resources, or can you help them listen to me a little better?
And don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't feel that you're supposed to know the answers and the doctor knows everything. No, ask the question, ask the patient. And if physician or provider says something you don't understand, say it. I don't understand. Please help me to understand this. And know that you're not alone in that. Patients all the time feel intimidated and think, well, I'm supposed to know. If I don't know, it means that I'm not smart. No, you are not going to know a lot of this information. It's not something that you just read about in a book. And so if you have concerns, you don't feel right, if they are seemingly ignoring your concerns, ask for someone else as pastoral. If you don't have someone else to advocate for you, ask the question, why do I feel like this? And you should get the answer. You shouldn't get, well, that's just the way it is. No, what's causing this? And why isn't it going away? And what's going to make it go away? Don't feel intimidated if you're going in as a patient. If you're a patient, ask questions. You really have to do that so you can advocate for yourself. And you have to learn how to do that. It's not easy. We learn it. We teach our children. They watch us. We're the role model. And so they will remember when I was at the doctor, and I had a rash on my leg. My mom asked, where did it come from? What caused this? And so then that child hopefully is hearing that and will then think to do the same thing when they're having to speak for themselves. But ask the questions.
But it also speaks to being comfortable with your doctor and finding a doctor you trust before you get into a critical situation. And even if they're not the doctor on call, for example, when you're in labor, but you have a good relationship with them, you could call them and say, I'd like to just speak to Dr. So-and-so. He or she is my usual doctor, and tell them I just don't feel like they're listening to me, or I don't feel comfortable. But I can't stress enough that I think it's important to find a doctor for routine annual visits before you get sick or before you become pregnant. Question way in the back there.
So, this being like a worldwide issue, where do you begin to start to combat it, on a global scale, because some communities are poor and others.
I say start where you are on the way to where you're going. So start with what you can do. What I can do right here, right now, is vote for the people I want to represent me, who will pay attention to my issues that can be addressed better. So that's one place you can attend programs like this, help out in your church, help out in volunteer for things, educate your daughters, your sons, people on things like that, gain more information. But there's, you start where you are. And one of the things I can't emphasize enough, even though it may seem like it matters little, it matters a lot to have people who represent you on government levels so that they can address the needs that you have. So one of the very first things you can do is vote for people who, and make them accountable to you, go and write your congressman or whatever, see your local board school, the school boards. There's so many places to advocate and be represented that we need to keep attention to that.
And so find out what those individuals stand for, and it's not the week before the election that then you try to get to know, what they represent. Start now, voting is important and crucial to make change.
I have a follow-up to that, actually. So could you touch on how does policy impact maternal and infant health? And how can people get involved in helping with potential policy reform.
So certainly, you know, if we look at policies, if we look at perhaps some of the initiatives are just better coming out, and we don't know where we're going with that. But if we look at the things about maybe we need to cut Medicaid, maybe we need to not expand Medicaid for a year after delivery for people. Maybe we need to look at resources that are covered by different insurances, et cetera. Those things are important. How do we get involved with it? Understand what those issues are, as Dr. Matori said, to understand who thinks like you do.
Thank you for listening in today. Weren't you inspired, encouraged, and uplifted? We hope so, because we're praying the best for you. Join us again next time for more betterment, because the better you are, the better you are.